that should suffice for the time being.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're just making the WhatsApp group now. So we'll stop this meeting and then we can communicate via that. And if you need something urgently, Effie and I are also available to talk via mobile. So just give us a call if that's easier.
Yeah, it's probably best to ring us.
So we're just checking the link just to make sure it's okay, and then we can communicate via that. And if you need something urgently, Effie and I are also available to talk via mobile. So just give us a call if that's easier.
Yeah, it's probably best to ring us.
It's working. So we're just checking the link just to make. Okay, I think that's it from us then before the conference starts, unless anyone has anything else. Like I said, we're available throughout the day, so just get in contact if anyone has any issues.
Caitlin, I will, so it's in, yeah, I'll forward it now.
Have a good day. We'll check in throughout.
The link. Sorry, can I just confirm that everyone else got that email with the link in for the posters?
Let me just check actually. Do you have it, Fatima? Do you have the link?
Yeah, I believe so. It's in the,
Okay,
yeah.
That's fine.
I got the email, so it will be in there,
yeah. Yeah, okay, fabulous. That's fine. I will forward it all again. Great. Thanks, guys. Brilliant. Caitlin, I'll forward it to you now.
Good morning, QI Southwest. My name is Michael Okacha. I'm a General Surgery Registrar and the Programme Chair and Creator of QI Southwest Conference. Today, we have some incredible keynote speakers lined up. We've got some amazing workshops that you get to participate in, and we've got prizes sponsored by some of the best QI organisations around the country. We're really excited that you could join us on this Saturday. We really hope you enjoy and learn and engage with us today. Please follow us on Twitter at QI Southwest and use the hashtag QISW2020. Now hand over to Ms. Pullyblank, who's going to discuss leadership and introduce our next keynote speaker. Thank you.
That we have the opportunity to make a change across the whole health system. So, good morning everyone. Welcome to QI Southwest, a quality improvement project. And it's fantastic to see so many of you here so early on a Saturday to try and improve care for patients. So, my name is Anne Pullyblank. I'm a consultant surgeon, and I've been asked by Michael Cock, the organiser of this fantastic conference, to explain my leadership history and also my definition of leadership in 5 minutes, which is quite hard to do. When I was asked to think about leadership, it made me reflect on the leadership roles that I have undertaken. And I think the first thing I would say to all of you sitting here is that when I was in your position, leadership wasn't something I thought about, or I thought I would, or I did not think I would be a leader. Obviously, I did the leadership course that you have to do to tick the box, but suddenly I found myself in a leadership position. And in preparation for talking to you this morning, I was thinking about how that happened. And of course, everyone in this room is a leader. If you work in healthcare, you work in a team, you lead a team, you help a team, you guide a team, even if you are not in a specific position of leadership. But I think the thing that happened is that I like to get stuff done, and I like to make things better. And so when I became a consultant, you know, this poster says it all behind me really. I learned about quality improvement, and I started off doing patient safety projects, and I just wanted to make things better. So as a junior consultant, I did lots of work, lots of projects, helped introduce the WHO checklist, for example. And then suddenly, without wanting to be a leader, I literally found myself as a clinical director for surgery. And I think what makes a good leader really is that you just want things to be better, you care about things, and you don't really care who gets the credit. I just like to see things better, but it doesn't matter if it's about me. And since then, I've become medical director now for the Academic Health Science Network, which means I'm making change across a region, and that's a really satisfying thing to do. The other important thing about being a leader, I think, is you have to know yourself. You need to know how you come across to other people. And the other top tip of mine is really you have to understand human behaviour, because most of getting things done is knowing how to speak to people and work with people. And I've been asked to introduce Simon Sinek, who's our fantastic speaker, and it's quite interesting. I reflected on how I became a leader, and it's because I just wanted to make things better. And one of his great talks that he's done is about, it's not about the what or the how, it's about the why. And so I think everything I've just said aligns with his principles that what makes a great leader is communicating why you want to do something. And for me, it's always been about improving patient care or improving our working lives in healthcare. So for me, leadership started with quality improvement. And so you're all in absolutely the right place today to become leaders, as doing small-scale projects improving patient care really taught me leadership. Now, I've said leadership is hard to teach. However, our next speaker knows all about this. We are extremely lucky to have Simon Sinek speaking to us today. He is a professor at Columbia University. He has written multiple books and given multiple TED Talks on leadership. And although I said leadership is hard to teach, he is an example of someone who clearly can teach it.
And this is because they have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. This is what a leader is.
We have to work extra hard to figure out the ways that we build their competence. We have to work extra hard to find ways to teach them the social skills that they're missing out on.
Hi,
How are you?
how are you doing?
Hey, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I'm Michael, founder, creator of QI Southwest Conference. And you've just been introduced by Miss Pully Blank, who's one of our consultants in Bristol, who's the director of the West of England Academic Health Science Network. And we are all so incredibly excited to have you speak to us today.
That's so nice of you. Thank you so much.
So I just thought that I would kind of shoot into questions, and then you could talk at us and kind of leave us with some of your unbelievable wisdom.
Oh, you're very kind. I'll let you follow. I'll follow your lead. Whatever, you know, and we'll have a nice discussion, you and I. I think that's the nicest way to do it.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have read your books and listened to your TED Talks, and something that really resonated with a lot of the colleagues I've spoken to about you is you had your business, you lost your passion, and that's something that healthcare workers face across the UK daily. You know, it's grueling work. How did you find your why? How did you redesign your purpose? And how can we do that in the healthcare sector?
So when I lost my passion all those years ago, I kept it to myself because I was embarrassed, quite frankly. You know, I was supposed to be strong. I was supposed to be this. I was supposed to be that. And so most of my days were spent lying, hiding, and faking, pretending that I was happier, more in control than I felt. And it really was, it took a friend who saw that something was different and said, "I'm worried about you, something's wrong." And I came clean, you know, in this safe space. And the lesson I've learned since then was, you know, life, career, work, however you want to frame it, is all too difficult for us to do alone. We're just not that strong as human beings. And so, but in groups and teams, we're amazing. And so the lesson I learned was to ask for help and to accept it when it was offered. Because it turns out we're all surrounded by people who care about us and love about us, but don't think we need their help because we act as if we don't. And this is what it means to be vulnerable, right? To say I'm struggling, or I need help, or I'm having and I don't use the term good day or bad day anymore, because they're too finite, they're too absolute. I use a head day and behind day. So I'll go to a friend and say, I'm having a behind day, you know, which makes me feel like I'll get through it, as opposed to like a bad day, which sounds like it's a label. And especially now with the increased stress, the camaraderie is the only thing that'll get that get healthcare workers through this. The thing that I struggle with the most for healthcare workers, to be honest, is, you know, right now you're heroes and people clap you and you say you work for the NHS and everybody's like, oh my God, thank you. But when this is all over,
Yeah.
it's going to go back to be doctors and nurses and support people. You know what I mean? And so what's going to happen is this amazing sense of like everybody loves us will go back, and you still have to go to work every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think to prepare yourselves that this is an amazing time and it's great to have the support, but you're going to go back to being just a normal person again.
Yeah.
And that's going to hurt because you're on this amazing high some of the time that really does help. But I think the lesson learned is to have someone cheering us on really makes a difference. And to start building the relationships and taking the lead role, in other words, being the leader, to now do that for each other, to build strong teams, to express vulnerability, and to say if you're, and again, leadership has nothing to do with the rank, but for somebody to come into work one day and say, I'm having a behind day, and I'm mustering the best I can, but I'm just going to need someone to watch my back today, please, because I just need to double check my work with someone, just, you know, and all you need is someone to put their hand on your back and say, I'm here. And it's amazing the power that can happen, that can have.
Yeah. I think that's something that we don't really do in healthcare, and everyone's kind of expected to struggle, and people quite proud of their struggle. But yeah, I think that would be amazing.
It's the same in the US, and I don't understand it. Why suffering is like a badge of honor. And I'll tell you this is an important lesson.
Yeah.
We have to transform the culture of healthcare. So in the military, they learned a lot of lessons in Iraq and Afghanistan. That this machismo, that suffering is a badge of honor, and this toughness over the course of time has very deleterious effect.
Okay.
That affect PTS and coping skills.
Yeah.
You know, and so they've transformed the U.S. military that mental health is considered now something you deal with. Like if you have a broken leg, you see a doctor. If you're not feeling yourself, you go talk to someone. Like that, you know, that is seen as equal. And people in leadership positions say out loud, "Hey guys, I'm off my game today. I'm going to go talk to the therapist at lunchtime. So I'll be out of commission for an hour. I'll see you later." You know, they're leading by example. They're not just telling their people this is important for you. And they've destigmatized asking for help. And they now embed, this is amazing, they embed mental health experts, a team of them, psychologists, counselors, the team of mental health experts embed with the military when they deploy.
Wow, okay.
And they embed with the doctors and nurses. Wow. They send teams of mental health experts embedded with doctors and nurses and people doing field medicine to help them cope with the massive trauma that they are struggling with and suffering and seeing every day. And in our hospitals back home, we have no such teams, probably because it's considered too expensive.
Yeah.
I think we have to transform the culture of healthcare. And if they can do it in the military, they can do it in our local hospitals.
Absolutely.
We have to destigmatize this idea of acting tough and suffering is some sort of twisted badge of honor. It's not. It's stupid. Number one. And number two, to start developing embedded teams in hospitals for no other reason than to be there for doctors and nurses to wander around and just make sure people are okay, to look for the signs of stress. And the irony is, it's not only healthier for those working in healthcare, but it's better for the patients too. You want someone who's mentally on it to be caring for you. So I think there has to be a transformation of culture in healthcare today. There has to be.
And in your book, Leaders Eat Last, you discuss how a leader can create the culture and the circle of safety, and, you know, how does a leader do that? I know it's a big question.
So I wish I could tell you the 5 simple steps. That's like asking me the 5 simple steps to falling in love. What are the 5 simple steps to making a friend? I'll tell you things you need to do. You need to remember their birthday. You need to buy flowers on Valentine's Day, right? Like,
Yeah.
but if you just do those things, that's not enough. Creating a circle of safety is lots and lots of little things that accumulate over time, like making a friend or falling in love, where you, like a partnership, where you get in the habit of thinking about the other person, right?
Yeah.
So you're in a relationship, your friends call you up and say, come over to our house for dinner. And you go, sounds great, we'll be there. And then you go home and you tell your partner, hey, I made dinner plans for Friday. Well-intended, really exciting. You're both friends with this other couple, but you learn not to do that. You learn to go, sounds great, I'll check.
Yeah.
And then you go be like, hey, we got invited for Friday. You want to go? Of course. You know I love them. And we're free on Friday. But it's the habit of checking in that produces trust.
Yeah, okay.
And so leadership is the same inside an organization, which is sometimes well-intended. Somebody in a leadership position will make decisions that are the right decisions. They don't check with anybody. And so then people feel like, well, what's the point? You could have asked. Well, I knew you were going to say yes. It's for your good, you know? And it's things like that. It's like, and it's checking in at the beginning of a meeting. How was your weekend? Just go around the room. What's on your heart and mind? It's being vulnerable. Like I said, it's like, hey guys, I'm having a behind day.
Yeah.
It's expressing vulnerability with your own intelligence. I don't understand this. Can someone explain this to me when you're the senior person? Hey, you're on the front lines every day. Can you just tell me what's going on because I'm up in my office and I haven't practiced medicine in 10 years. Can you just tell me what's it like?
Yeah.
And these little things build trust because people start to feel their opinions matter. Their work is recognized. They matter. And then trust starts to build in the circle of safety and people respond in kind. Leaders set the environment and people respond to the environment they're in. That's really important to remember about trust. Trust is environmental. You can take a good person and put them in a bad environment, they'll do bad things. You can take someone who's done bad things, is considered untrustworthy, you change their environment, they can change their lives around and become remarkable members of the team. It's environmental. And we respond to the environments we're in as human beings. And it's leaders who set that environment. I've never heard a great leader say, prove to me why I should trust you. Leaders bestow trust. They take the risk to trust first. However, it's the team that says, prove to us why we should trust you.
Very
right?
true.
And that's why we call you leader. We don't call you leader because you're in charge. That's got nothing to do with it. We call you leader because you chose to take the risk first. You chose to rush towards the danger. You took the risk to trust. And people say to me all the time, but I didn't get to choose my team. You didn't get to choose your children. You love them. They're imperfect and sometimes completely screwed up, and yet you show up every day with an effort. Now, the difference is with your children, you're loyal to the individuals. You're loyal to the children. As a leader, you're loyal to the team. You're loyal to the team before you're loyal to any individual. And the mistake that I've made is I've actually caused damage to the team by accident because I was too loyal to individuals. I spent all my time trying to fix and at the same time it was destroying the team. You got to be loyal to the team, what is the right thing to do to maintain team dynamics, which includes spending a lot of time helping someone sometimes, but sometimes you want to ask your A players to take care of your B players, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise you're taking people for granted.
Absolutely.
So I wish it were simple, but it's like parenting. It's a process more than an event.
Yeah.
And sometimes just like being a parent, sometimes you screw it up. You show up with love and you show up with the desire to take care and see those around you rise, which is the responsibility of leadership, to create an environment in which people feel that they can be themselves, in which people feel that they can be honest and open.
Yeah.
And the circle of safety
Will develop.
established, and it's the responsibility of the people to step into that circle of safety.
Okay.
It is mutual. At some point, you have to say, okay, I'm going to take the risk to step into this, and I'm going to be vulnerable and try things out here and see how it goes. And even if it goes wrong sometimes, I'm going to try again. Like there is mutual responsibility, like in a relationship. one person has to go first in a relationship, but you both got to play the game.
Yeah, very true. I think one thing that so you famously said in a 2013 interview that there's no good or bad leader, that you're a leader or you're not a leader. And I mean, I really love that. And I did my master's in strategic leadership and organizational design, so I kind of understand that. But for most people, I think they really struggle with what is a leader? How do you even define what a leader is? It's such a complex concept.
What's a parent? Parents responsible for seeing their children develop into their best selves.
Yeah.
Right? What's a coach? A coach is there to see that the players can play to their best selves. Coach doesn't play the game. A leader is a responsibility. Leadership is a responsibility. It's not a rank. I know many people that sit at the highest levels of organizations who are not leaders. We do as they tell us because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And I know many people with no formal authority, but they've made the choice to look after the person to the left of them and the person to the right of them, and we would trust them and follow them anywhere. They are the leaders. Leadership is not a rank. It's not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. It's the responsibility to see those around you rise. And it's very human and very messy, because humans are messy. And we're all filled with ego and insecurity and ambition, and we're constantly posturing and compensating and pulling back, and we're messy. Human beings are messy, and leadership is messy. But it's a striving. It's a process. You know, the promotion is the event, but now you have to be the leader. And if you do, and I get this message, this question all the time. What if senior management are not good leaders? If they're, you know, they have their heads up their ass, what do I do? Well, you can't change those people. There's nothing you can do that will change them. No number of anonymously sent books will change their leadership style. You can be the leader you wish you had, which you can say, we work in these conditions because we don't have great leadership, but I'm going to show up every day and take it upon myself to take care of the people to the left of me and take care of the people to the right of me.
Very powerful.
Leadership is a responsibility to see those around us rise.
I really respect that. So, some questions from the Twitter sphere. A lot of people have been really excited since we made your announcement. One question that came out that was quite interesting is, when do you know that you're a leader?
Great question. You know, I think you'll start to recognize you're a leader when you start to see those around you do things that you didn't expect them to do, that they start taking the risks they need to take. It's like when you see your team working together in a way that didn't work before. When people come up to you and say thank you. You know, I think there's some element of agency as well. My friend George Flynn says the first criterion to being a leader is you have to want to be one. If you don't want to be a leader, you know, leadership is a capacity. It's like being a parent. Like, everyone has the capacity to have children. Everyone has the capacity to be a parent. It doesn't mean everybody should be a parent, and it doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent.
Yeah.
Leadership is the same. You know, everyone can do it. It doesn't mean everybody wants to do it, and it doesn't mean everybody should do it. It's really hard work. You know, when you're a worker bee, your job is to, like, do your job. And when you move to a leadership position, formally or informally, your job is not to do their job. Your job is to create an environment in which they can do their job better. It's to take care of the people. So there's not a hospital administrator on the planet responsible for the patients. And I hate when they say, what's your number one priority? Patients. No, it's not. It's not. Lie. The responsibility of hospital administration is to take care of the people taking care of the patients. And when those people feel taken care of, then all of their energy gets directed into taking care of a patient and each other. But when they don't feel taken care of, they have to direct energy to protect themselves from leadership, and that actually hurts their ability to take care of a patient. And I'll tell you a real life story. It's a horrific story. That's an extreme case. It's a true story that happened to a friend of mine. A friend of mine in the middle of the night had a miscarriage. Fortunately, she had a friend staying over and drove her to the hospital. It was a particularly poorly led hospital in Brooklyn, New York. And she walked in and she went up to the counter, her hands covered in blood. And she said, "Can I use the bathroom, please, to wash my hands?" And they said, "You have to sign in, you have to check in first, because the bathroom is behind us and we cannot give you access until you're formally checked into the hospital." She goes, "I totally understand. I'll fill out the form. Can I please just go wash my hands?" They would not let her go to the bathroom to wash her hands until she filled out the form. She's filled out the forms with bloody hands. She then went, when she was admitted, the attendings and all the nurses there didn't trust each other. And so they performed the same test on her 5 or 6 times because nobody trusted the previous person who did the test. One nurse, because a pregnancy test shows up positive apparently when you have a miscarriage, one nurse congratulated her that she was pregnant. Oh. As horrible as it is, it's a routine thing and she should have been checked out of there, in an hour or two. 13 hours later, she was released. There was one orderly who was actually helping. He was helping her as much as he could, and he got yelled at for not doing his job. His job was to take care of people, and he was actually yelled at for caring about a patient. This was a hospital where trust had completely broken down to the point where there's no negligence, but the quality of care had declined so much that she's traumatized now. She has never tried to get pregnant since. It was just overwhelming for her. And these cases fall through the cracks. And the number of deaths that happen, not because of negligence, but because of just little poor decisions. The morning team didn't trust the nighttime team, numbers got missed. And so we have people dying, or at least suffering more, not because of the quality of our training, not because of the quality of our equipment, not because of the quality of our medicines, it's because of the quality of our cultures in our hospitals. And so leadership's responsibility is to take care of the people who are taking care of the people. And the problem is some of them used to be doctors and nurses, and some of them are really good doctors and nurses. It's not your job anymore. I know, and you may even know how to do my job better than me because that's what got you promoted. Not your job anymore. It's an entirely new skill set. And this is the problem, which is we teach people how to do their jobs. You go to school, you get degrees, you need licenses to become a nurse or a doctor or anything else in the hospital. And we give you tons of training, how to operate the equipment, how to perform the procedure. Why do we do that? Why do we give you so much training? So you'll be good at it. And then we promote someone to a position of leadership because they're good leaders, or because they're good at doing something else, because they just worked there longer than everybody else. I don't know. We promote them, and how much training do we give them to be leaders?
Zero.
So if we expect somebody, we train somebody because we need to. You couldn't. Would you let a nurse give you a blood test if nobody ever taught them how to give a blood test? No way. Why would we let anyone lead us who's never taught to be a leader? And leadership skills are things like empathetic listening, active listening, things like how to give and receive feedback, things like how to have an effective confrontation. Things go wrong all the time. Do you know how to do that, or do you just start yelling? It's about vulnerability, how to build circles of safety and trust. These are skills. These are learnable, practicable skills. And yet, the amount of training that we give people who get promoted into leadership positions in healthcare is And then we wonder why we have this ridiculous culture of suffering. We wonder why the camaraderie is, misery loves company sometimes, but trust doesn't flow up and down the organization. All of these are solvable problems, every single one of them. Every single one of them.
And then something that I'm personally excited about is the Leadership Academy course that you're developing. And, just literally going back to what we've just spoken about, getting that leadership training. Could you just tell us a bit more about the program and how we sign up?
So when COVID happened, we had to pivot. And so we decided to take all of the things we used to do in person and put it online, obviously. But it was really important for us to have live classes. We wanted human interaction.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did was when we developed the Why Discovery course, we want everybody to find their why. We made it so that there was always free seats available for people who couldn't afford it. It was really important to us because you shouldn't have to have money to find your why, And we've started developing verticals. So we have a whole Why Discovery for veterans, military veterans. We're developing a whole Why Discovery just for healthcare workers, so that when you're going through the process, you can talk to people who know what you go through. So yeah, that's all happening. You know what we can do? I'll have to make a little note to myself here. Why don't we give you a discount code for anyone who wants to take any course? We'll do 20% off. Why don't we just make a discount code? I don't know, NHS.
That'd be awesome.
So let's make the discount code NHS. I'll make sure we set it up as soon as we're done here.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to go take any of our courses, we'll set up a discount code for 20% off for NHS.
Perfect. Simon, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, and just we're honestly so grateful to have had you with us today. Thank you. Are there any kind of closing words you want to leave us with, or?
Take care of yourself and take care of each other. One of the greatest joys in life is to extend care to someone that you work with. And caring for someone doesn't mean fixing their problems. It's just making them feel that someone has their back. It's sometimes really simple. It's sometimes as simple as saying good morning, or how are you, or how was your weekend, or I'm worried about you, or just putting your hand on someone's shoulder and be like, we'll get through this together. We'll get through this together. I'm by your side no matter what. Yeah. Little things like that are remarkable. And if you know if someone's having a behind day, on your way to lunch, just sort of like take a little detour and go to wherever they are and just say, hey, just checking on you. I was thinking about you. Thought I'd say hi. Yeah. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Just to let other people know that they're not alone pays dividends. And it's a magical feeling to be able to do it for someone.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna.
We help individuals and teams to form a team. In my work, civility can literally save lives. Hi. My name is Chris Turner. I'm a consultant in emergency medicine at University Hospitals of Coventry and Warwickshire. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Civility Saves Lives. Civility Saves Lives is a grassroots organisation which exists really to raise awareness of the impact of behaviour on healthcare. So healthcare is a team business. We deliver it in complicated and sometimes complex environments, and we do it with varying outcomes. And for the last 10 years, as well as being an emergency medicine consultant, I was a governance lead, investigating and trying to understand the sorts of situations that we all hear about and dread being involved in. And for the first few years, if somebody had said to me, Chris, what do you think the answer is? I would have been completely clear. I would have said to people that the answer is process, if only everybody did what they're meant to do. But there's a problem with that. And the problem is this. Once you start to investigate these incidents where terrible things happened, what you tend to find is that the people involved are good, diligent, knowledgeable, hard-working professionals, the sorts of people that you'd want to look after you and your family. And yet here they are at the end of some catastrophic error. And gradually what I came to realise was that process is important, but something else is more important. And that's people and how we treat each other. And that's not to say that I think that process can be discarded, because it is important to be able to say what we're trying to do here and how it looks in a perfect day. But we need to understand that the process happens between us and in environments, and those two things have a significant impact upon our performance. Because it's easy to look at process, it's easy to look at healthcare and think that what we're dealing with here is a linear thing, that this happens, then this happens, then this happens. But most of us know that our days are full of things that change, and we are walking from one place to the next, and we get 5 questions, and you get asked to do a bunch of other things and look at the CCG, and can you just make sure that that patient's all right and that patient's all right. So we are constantly adapting to a complex environment. And what's more, that when we get given these situations, there is a demand that we can be creative and create the best solution to the situation at a given point. And even when we're talking about diagnosis, if you work in a job where you have to diagnose a problem, be it an illness or something completely different, not related to people's health, then what's required is that we understand the problem and then we create the solution. And it turns out that healthcare is incredibly creative, partly because of the complexity of the world that we live in and work in. And if you want people to come up with the best solutions for complex problems, then what you want is you want them to have wide open bandwidth. You want their brains to be able to function in a psychologically safe environment. You want their brains to be able to take in all the information that they can do and come up with the best answer. And one of the ways that we do this is by obviously getting other people's perspectives on board, because none of us are smart enough to have all the answers to everything, and that we work in these fantastic teams full of people who often have the great answer. And we know that 80% of people in the NHS don't actually tell us their great solution to problems in the NHS because they're kind of embarrassed that they might be humiliated for it. So we need to have cultures where people are able to tell us what their great solution is. But also, when we're just working in our teams, we need to make sure that people feel able to speak up and tell us what they think is the right thing at that moment in time. And it turns out that the evidence is that if you have a positive environment, if you have an environment where people feel able to speak, that they're not going to be ridiculed in, what happens is that they come up with more and better solutions. Now, not all the solutions are going to work, but if you're leading that team, if you're the person who's in the team, if you don't hear about these solutions, you won't get the chance to hear about the brilliant idea, the one that you haven't thought of, because none of us can think of everything. And the big issue here is that our creativity can be stolen from us. Our intellect can be stolen from us. And the thing that steals our intellect, our creativity, that reduces our working memory, the space where we make these great thoughts, the thing that steals from that is when we are over-aroused. And in particular, when people are hostile to us or when we perceive threat. And rudeness makes us perceive threat. And one of the problems for us is that rudeness is endemic in many bits of the NHS, many bits of healthcare. It's not just the NHS, this is across the world. And rudeness steals from our cognitive abilities. It steals from our cognitive abilities in a very measurable way, so that if I was to meet you and I was to be mild to moderately rude to you, in the moment you would feel a bit threatened, and your bandwidth, your working memory would close down by on average about 61%. And that's not screaming and shouting, that's just me being a bit cutting, a bit rude, you know, taking your legs out from underneath you in the conversation. And I don't think we've appreciated that. I don't think we've appreciated the impact that it's had. In fact, I think we've worked in cultures where we have completely normalized the belittling of people around us. And the people who are most likely to do this are unfortunately those of us in leadership positions or positions of authority. And that's such a shame. I mean, I have seen this role modelled, not by everybody, by any manner of means, but I've seen this role modelled throughout my entire NHS career. In fact, I've seen it role modelled in other fields as well. And it's that when people become bosses, something happens. Something happens to people when they become bosses, and they think that their opinion is way more important. They think they should have all the answers. They start to behave in different ways. And if you look at the work of people like Paul Pith and Dacher Keltner, what you begin to see is that when we become bosses, when we have that authority, we are 3 times more likely to sit in a meeting on our computer doing something other than that meeting. We're 3 times more likely to interrupt people, and we're 3 times more likely to raise our voice at somebody else. And when we raise our voice at somebody else, we do make them feel threatened. When we make them feel threatened, we close down their bandwidth, they don't think so well. And we, as the bosses, don't get the benefit of their great thoughts. And that's just intensely frustrating. And some of this boils down to the sort of style of leadership that we choose to engage. And just as something to think about for you, we can choose to lead shallow, or we can choose to lead deep. And the shallow leadership style is to shout and bawl, to belittle, to crush, to humiliate, to squeeze people into doing what you think they should be doing, to make them do it. To lead deep is to know people. To lead deep is to know people, to understand them, to make them feel heard, so that you can understand where they're coming from, and collectively you can go in a direction which you agree on, so you have goal alignment and you're going together, not that you're dragging somebody else or forcing somebody else to behave in a different way. And that kind of takes me on to another aspect of leadership and behaviour, and that's the impact that we can have on those around us in terms of their personal well-being and engagement in the workplace. There is more and more evidence that the people who determine your well-being on a given day at work are those around you, but primarily your immediate line manager, the person that you are having to take your work to on that shift. So if you're a band 6 nurse, it might be the band 5. If you work in medicine, it might be the consultant or the registrar that you're having to go and talk to. And if you're working in one of the offices, it could be the manager in that office. How that person, the line manager, how that person treats you appears to be the single greatest determinant of your well-being at work on a given day. And I think many of us can relate to that. We've all come to work and had to deal with the boss who was in a crappy mood. They're in a crappy mood and we seem to pay for it. And that's frustrating, but it's also a tremendous opportunity for any of us who have people who directly report to us, who come to us to show us their work and to talk to us about how to make their work better, then that interaction is going to determine how good their day is to a large extent. And it is a wonderful opportunity for us to talk to people, to make them feel respected, to make them feel heard, and they will walk away with a spring in their step and a better day. And I really like the idea that, you know, this isn't about us going and doing a bit of mindfulness. This isn't about us going and learning to commune with nature. This is about the actual interactions that we have with each other in the workplace and the impact that we can have on the people around us to make their day the best that we can make it. Because when we make their day the best that we can make it, we can hopefully help them to open their bandwidth out. They can then think about the smarter, better solutions, and everybody's a winner in that situation. Civility Saves Lives is a movement that's grassroots. We are dedicated to talking about the impact of behaviour on team performance, but also individual performance. It's all Creative Commons. If you want to use any of the stuff, you're absolutely welcome. You don't need to ask for permission, but it's always lovely to hear from people who are interested in this. I'd like to thank the guys for the opportunity to talk today. It's been a real privilege, and I'm astonished that we found a day with such lovely weather here in Birmingham where we couldn't be inside. And finally, I'd like to introduce James Montford, the Director of QI from the Nightingale Hospital, who's about to speak next. Thank you very much for listening.
Most of our students' pennies seem to drop about the different tools and approaches that they've been learning to make quality improvement live in their daily work and their project.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me to share a perspective on leading and learning in the time of COVID from the London Nightingale. My name is James Mountford, and I've recently started as the Director of National Improvement Strategy at NHS E&I, but my former life was at the Royal Free London, which is a large teaching hospital in North London. And I want to take you back to the end of March this year, when I got a call from our medical director, Alan McGlennan, who said, we're building a field hospital to cope with the COVID surge so that London is protected and doesn't look like North Italy. It's in the Excel Centre. Can you meet me here tomorrow? And what we then did over the next month has taught me so much about quality and learning and how to lead in healthcare. The Nightingale Hospitals are aptly called, not just because 2020 is the 200th anniversary of Florence's birth, but also because Florence Nightingale was the pioneer of measurement and in many ways the pioneer of improvement for patient benefit in healthcare. What you see now is a picture of the floor of the Excel Centre. And we arrived to find the army and a very big open space. And my first learning was that the world is all about expectation. So I sat open-mouthed and thought, goodness me, how on earth are we going to turn this into a hospital? And the fantastic army colleagues thought, this is great. There's a roof, there's heating, there's electricity, and no one's shooting at us. So the first couple of weeks were around turning a conference centre into an intensive care unit. And the amount of kit, the logistics, and the oxygen supply, you can see a picture of the tank there, were like nothing I'd ever seen. And I really commend to people to learn about the military. If you ever get a chance to work with them, it would be fantastic. They really do understand core spirit and how to do command leadership. So we turned that into what you now see, which looks like a ward. It looks like a Nightingale ward, an open ward with a corridor down the middle. And the idea was that if we needed, we could take this up to several dozen of these to take over 1,000 patients. I want you just to note the chair that you see at the end of one of the beds. So we were very clear that there were many, many things that we didn't know. We didn't know about the disease. 100 days earlier, no one had heard of COVID. We didn't know how to deliver care in a conference centre, and we didn't know how to deliver care with the workforce that we had in the Nightingale. Wonderful people drawn from inside and outside the NHS, from hospitals all over London, from multiple intensive care units, and many people who were not familiar with intensive care working in that environment. So we decided, and this is really my central message, we decided that we had to be as good as we could possibly be, as quick and as clear at learning. And if we didn't, then we would cause harm to our staff and to our patients. And one of the huge advantages of the Nightingale as well was the clarity of mission. So everybody was there with two goals in mind. The primary goal was to save lives and protect London. And the secondary, in service of that, was to protect our staff, particularly the staff on the ward, and particularly the critical care nurse whose role was scaled from the usual 1-to-1 to 1-to-4. And so we built a system, which you can see now, which was designed to get the maximum knowledge from our own experience and from the world. And bear in mind, not really published trials at the time, lots of external opinion, things flying around on Twitter, what your friend in Madrid had heard. So we wanted to make sure we got the knowledge that the world had to each bedside into the hands of our caregivers and to make their life as simple as possible in the most difficult of circumstances. And I just want to walk you around the elements of this learning system. So there are 5 elements that we constructed in the Nightingale, which I think are generalizable to other settings. I'll say a little bit about this at the end. But they are basically, first principle, gather data, gather relevant data and bring it all together. That sounds like an obvious statement, but we so often divide governance data and risk data and improvement data, or data that's about patients from data that's about staff. In the Nightingale, we brought it all together really early and thought really clearly about what is the data that we need to protect our patients and our staff. The second principle is then to analyse that data in a coherent way. And lots of the ideas that I'll talk about and the improvements that we focused on came from that. The third principle is to have decision-making bodies. They'll look different, again, in every case. In the Nightingale, we had a workforce group that met daily, an operational group that met daily, a matrons group, and also a wider clinical forum that met daily. But each of these groups had clear responsibility for prioritising areas to focus on and changes to make within the Nightingale system. The fourth is often actually where improvement starts, which is about making changes. And then the fifth principle is to verify that the loop has been closed. And the really, really interesting thing about all of this was how much of the information that we got was simply to fix things that were broken in the system. So things that we thought we were doing, but we weren't, or things that we hadn't realized that we needed to do. I'll just give you a couple of quick examples. So we didn't realize until we opened that, remember the chair, that the nurses who were recording OBS on a paper chart, that it was incredibly uncomfortable for them. They couldn't actually do it without bending their backs. One of the great things about a conference centre is there are loads of chairs around. So that evening we were able to run around, get some chairs and get them to the bedside. Other examples, again, that came from the court of reality incredibly early on, we had no clocks, so people couldn't tell the time. So we were able to say, clocks, they're on order, they'll be here on Tuesday. But in order to do that, you need to have a system that's able to recognize the problem, to codify it, to pass it to someone that can make a decision, and then to make that decision. And those are the elements of our learning system. And towards that, we invented a role of the bedside learning coordinator, whose job it was to be on the clinical floor, talking to people, not as an inspector, not as a checker, but as somebody who was helpful. So you would stop by the shoulder of a nurse and you'd say, what's working? What could be improved? and then you'd write it down. They were simply too busy to do that. And so a lot of the information that we got into our system, almost 500 ideas of changes, most of which actually did get implemented, many of them came from this novel role, the bedside learning coordinator. What I really want to do is to make a point about improvement and the way that we think about it out of this. So what we did in the Nightingale was almost to turn improvement on its head. Normally, we take individuals and we skill them up, we give them armour and tools to become improvers. And that's important. You need that, and we have many of those people in the Nightingale. Another complementary thing, not an alternative, but an and, is to build an operating system which is conducive to learning. And that, I think, is the other message I really want to bring home, that we need, across the NHS, to build learning into our regular operations. So many of the things that we ask our staff to cope with are things that we should fix. Think back to the chairs, think back to the clocks. They're nothing to do with medicine, but they're everything to do with helping staff help patients. At the moment, too often, we ask our staff to be workaround jockeys, and that really is unfair. Let's build a system which works, which learns from the best knowledge outside, combined with internal experience, to allow us to deliver the best for our staff to the best for our patients. So you might say, how relevant is this? You know, this was an exceptional situation. Money was not the object it normally is. How relevant is this in peacetime, in real life? Well, I think it's very relevant. Think back to those 5 principles. Why shouldn't they apply in normal work? And indeed, they are. So in the Royal Free, in one of its hospitals, Chase Farm, the bedside learning coordinator role is being trialled as a part of an overall learning system. Really interesting insights from that around, for example, endoscopy and how to do that. All sorts of insights about patient flow, signage, communication to patients, how to use rooms. So we went from one room, then into another room. That changed as a result of the learning system and listening to staff who said, actually, it's better to wait for the particles to settle and just use one room. It isn't worth using 2 rooms. So in the wider picture, what I'm asking is, or suggesting is, we listen to our staff, we listen to our patients, we bring that together as normal operations to make stuff better. I think there's an incredibly strong link here to motivating staff. We've got an NHS people plan out there. A really, really big part of that can be having staff see their voice in making their job better. Every member of staff in the NHS cares about their job. What is more invigorating than seeing your insights translated into how things work in the place that you work? So just to close, I'd like to talk about the importance of team. And my particular point is really about the breadth of teams that we work in healthcare and who we think is part of our team and who is essential. So I'd like you to meet Aldis. Aldis is from Scotland. She hadn't been planning to work in the Nightingale at all. She'd been planning to help Glastonbury run because she's an events manager. But that wasn't happening, and her sister is a nurse up in Scotland, and she wanted to do her bit during COVID as well. And I first met Aldis in the Scrubs tent at the Nightingale. The point about Aldis is to see every day when you bumped into her, her smiling face, to hear her ideas, the learning system. Aldis fed into that just as much as the critical care consultants and the matrons did. She said to me, I never expected to be working in a hospital, but it's been the most rewarding job I've ever done. And I think she's actually working now in a hospital in London. So she was as important as anyone else in the team. And one of the things we got right in Nightingale was describing everything we were doing as one team for those patients on the ward. Thank you.
Here's your laptop.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Mountford, for that that great talk. I will just allow you to join. Just give me one moment, and then
That's okay.
we have lots of questions from our audience. Let me just allow you to share that. Just give me a second. Just to share his video.
Very good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, request sound camera. Click name. Request sound camera. Where is it? It's not on there. No.
Dr. Mountford, are you able to turn on your video for us?
So if you show me the button to do that, then I will. But oh, so it's just appeared. Brilliant. You've clearly moved me into a different. It says, actually, though, it says you can't turn on the video because the host has stopped it. So I'm clicking on the button, but it doesn't start. But if you can hear me, then we can just carry on like this.
That's the important thing, I guess.
Yeah.
That's right. So I'll get cracking on the questions because I know we don't have a lot of time, and we've got some really great questions from our audience. So the first question for you is, what was the biggest challenge you had to overcome transforming a multifaceted commercial centre into the Nightingale Hospital?
Well, it's a great question, and I want to actually link it back to what Simon Sinek was talking about. I hadn't seen what he was going to say, but I couldn't have imagined a better platform for the Nightingale. So, as I said in the talk, we had a disease that was unknown to man 100 days ago. We had a workforce, many of whom were completely unused to an ICU setting, and we had a building that was an exhibition center. And so just trying to bring all of that together in a way that allowed people to stand at the bedside and deliver care safely was absolutely the biggest challenge. Now, what were the elements of that? Well, they ranged from putting in an oxygen supply of substantial size to making sure that there were staff welfare areas and that people knew when to turn up for their shift, and all of those sorts of things, and that we got that learning system to work, so that the intelligence that people gained from going through their shift was fed into the next shift to make things better.
Great. We've got another question from Fatima, one of our audience members. So it says, oh, great, we can see you
It's
as well.
allowed me to turn the camera
much better.
Lovely.
Great. So the question is, strong communication is integral to any successful project execution. What else would you say is vital for execution of a successful project like the London Nightingales?
So that's another great question, and a surprisingly easy one to answer in the following way. We were really lucky in that it was very, very clear what we needed to do. And I think what's most useful to think about when we're trying to borrow learnings from that experience, the Nightingale, but also everyone's COVID experience in the early days, actually, into how we play that into the future, is that it's often much less clear what we're trying to do. So in Nightingale, we were trying to save as many lives as possible, protect London. And in doing that, remember what Simon Sinek said, protect the staff and really look after them. So those were our twin objectives, and everything else flowed from that. So I guess that the thing that I've spent a lot of time with colleagues since trying to think about is, well, in a world where you're frankly balancing a lot more competing priorities, and perhaps different people in your team or in the next department might have a different view about what you're trying to do, how we can frame normal life in as clear as possible terms about what our purpose is.
Excellent. Good. Awesome. And I think the final question really is, I know that you must be proud of a lot that you achieved with the London Nightingale, but what specifically would you say you're most proud of in terms of the setup of those hospitals?
Well, again, there's a lot that I could say to that, but I think the fact that across London and in Essex now, there are many settings where people are taking these principles of the learning system, the bedside learning coordinator role, other aspects about, you know, how we bring together the data quickly to make decisions about patient care. I talked about the endoscopy example at Chase Farm, but there are many others in Barts, in Broomfield, in Essex, UCLH, etc., you know, which are in all different aspects of care. So the staff from Nightingale have gone back to their usual workplaces, and they're trying to take forward that model of learning. You know, I'm just proud to have worked with them, and that they found something there that they want to take forward as their regular work.
Amazing. And I'm sure that it's not something just for now, and it will continue into the future and have a lasting impact on healthcare, really. Thank you so much again.
Well, it could do, but what it needs is the people who are delivering healthcare and the people who are leading healthcare, which, you know, are often the same people, or should be. So the people who are in this conference today, it needs something to be, in a sense, picked up by them, that they think, yeah, I'm going to try that when I get into work next week. That will be what gives us a legacy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again for agreeing to speak with us today and answering all of our questions. It has been very inspiring, not just for me, but I'm sure many of our audience will agree that they've learned something new and been motivated to be that change as well. So if there's any final thoughts that you have, or comments that you wanted to make.
Well, I'd just like to thank you for inviting me to be part of this event. I think it's absolutely brilliant. You look at the range of people, you look at the positioning of this to say, you know, this isn't a medical event, this isn't a clinical event, actually, this is open to everyone. I had a lovely holiday in the Southwest over the summer, and thank you to the Southwest for offering something actually globally. I know there's people dialing in from outside the UK as well today, so thank you very much.
Exactly, it's very exciting. Thanks again.
Lovely, thank you.
Hi Tasha, how you
Michael.
doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Welcome
Good.
to QI Southwest. We're really grateful for you joining us this morning.
It's good to be here.
Whenever you're ready, I will make you the boss. Here we go.
Brilliant. My favourite person to be. I'm going to share my sound with you, and hopefully you shall be able to hear it okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
I can hear it. I'm going to mute myself, okay?
Okay, awesome.
All right, bye.
Okay, I'm just going to pin my own video. Okay, so hopefully you can all see my mat okay. So we're just going to start simply just coming into child's pose. So come down onto your knees, bring your feet together and your knees slightly apart, and then just walk your arms overhead, and then just rest your forehead down onto your mat. And just close your eyes once you get here. We'll just take a few minutes now before we start kind of moving or doing anything, just to begin arriving onto our mats for a moment. Begin tuning in with our breath. And just noticing how it is everybody is feeling this morning. Without changing anything, just beginning observing your inhales and your exhales. So as you inhale, observe where in the body it is that you feel the breath. So whether that's just kind of in the upper portion of the chest, or do you feel anything happening further down? Not changing it, but just noticing. And as you exhale, just follow the breath out. Again, paying attention to which parts of your body feel like they soften. And just looking to see how kind of consciously we're breathing, how fully we're breathing. If you've all had quite a busy morning, you've had a lot going on mentally, you might find that you're kind of just breathing into that upper portion of the chest, so your breath might be quite short and shallow. And that's fine if it is, but let's just start to slow everything down and make it a little bit more conscious. Now I'd like you to try to breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 4. As you breathe in, try and find expansion, not just into the chest and not even just into the belly, but into those ribs at the side of the body and at the back of the body. You might feel a little bit of extra pressure against your sides of your belly as you breathe in. And then as you let the breath go, see if you can invite in a little bit more softness into your neck and into your shoulders. Noticing if there's any tension in the face, particularly in the jaw. Make sure that your tongue isn't pressed against the roof of your mouth. Perhaps seeing if there's a little bit more kind of availability available in your neck and your shoulders to let go a little bit more. Maybe your arms are reached quite far overhead and you can just allow them to pull in a little bit closer in towards the body so that it feels a bit more natural here. Filling up as much space in the body as you can at the top of those inhales. And just letting go a little bit more with every exhale. Noticing also here how it is that you feel in the fronts of your hips. If you've been sat down behind a screen all day, you might find this position actually it's quite intense around that area. We'll move through a practice today where we're just going to open up a little bit more into your hips, into your lower back, and into the neck and the shoulders, just to find a little bit of release for you. With that being said, just slowly find your way up into a tabletop position. So stacking your shoulders over your wrists and your hips over your knees. You can either have the tops of the feet down or your toes tucked. Your preference here will likely to be what kind of availability you have in your ankles. And we're just going to take a few really gentle cat-cow stretches, and you can make these a little bit more intense as you go, but try and start quite softly just to let your body wake up and catch up with you a little bit. So as you take an inhale, just allow your belly to soften down towards the mat, lifting up through your tailbone and lifting your chest up towards the ceiling, maybe taking your gaze up slightly. And then as you exhale, start to tuck your tailbone under, draw your chin in towards your chest and really round out through your upper back. Staying with your breath, inhale again, lift your chest, lift your tailbone, allow your belly to soften, but try not to sink into the shoulders here, so stay strong on the shoulders. And then as you exhale, tuck the tailbone under, draw your chin in towards your chest, really press the floor away to find a nice stretch into your upper back. Again, inhale, lift your chest, lift your tailbone. We're going for one more here. Maybe go a little bit deeper if that feels good in your body. And then exhale to tuck the tailbone under, draw your chin in towards your chest. And then slowly come back to your tabletop position. Just finding a nice neutral spine here. You're just going to take your right foot towards the outside of your right hand. And once you get here, maybe if it feels comfortable for you, you can slide that left knee back a little bit so you can soften a little bit more into your hips. If this is uncomfortable on the knee, you can always roll your mat a little bit just to tuck under the knee. And then as you take an inhale, I want you to reach your right hand towards the sky to find a nice little gentle twist through your thoracic spine. Really breathing here. As you inhale, think about lengthening forward slightly. And as you exhale, drawing your right shoulder back and your left shoulder slightly more under without overextending through that top arm. And taking one more breath. Exhale, maybe finding a little bit more space in that twist. And then slowly release your right hand down. Shift your weight back towards your heels slightly so that you find space to bring your right knee back in line with your left. And then we're just going to take that over to the other side. So take your left leg forward. If you need to bring a hand to the back of the calf to help it forward, go for it. And then again, maybe sliding that right knee back if you want to find a little bit more of a stretch through the front side of that right hip. Trying to keep your hips square here. Again, inhale, reach your left hand up towards the sky. And then as you exhale, maybe finding more of a twist here. Again, trying not to shift too much through the hip so that this rotation comes from the spine rather than compensating at the hip. Got one more breath here. Find length in the spine, try and find a little bit more space there. And then as you exhale, draw the right shoulder under and that left shoulder back just a little bit more. Slowly take that left hand down, frame your left foot, shift your weight back and bring your left foot and your left knee back in line with your right. I'm trying to work out my left and rights this morning. From here, tuck your toes under. We're just going to lift up into a downward facing dog. Now for your first downward facing dog, I don't want you to worry too much about how it looks, but rather how it feels. So just start to gently paddle out your feet. So come high up onto the toes of one foot and press the opposite heel away. Noticing really how that feels through the back of the legs, into your hamstrings. Maybe have a little twist from side to side, trying to find a bit of a stretch through your side body. Taking that over to the other side. And then coming back to center. And just gently walk your hands back towards your feet. And if your hamstrings are tighter, just bend your knees here so you don't have to have straight legs in your forward fold. Bend your knees as much as you need to so that this stretch doesn't just happen into the hamstrings. Our forward folds are a full back body stretch. So think about letting your knees bend and tilting your tailbone and your pelvis down so that you can lift your hips up towards the sky. And then just take hold of opposite elbows and let the body ragdoll for a moment. Letting go of the head, maybe bounce a little bit, move from side to side. Noticing if you've still got awareness of your breath, and if you haven't, just coming back to it, staying if you can with that 4 count of breath in and that 4 count out. Trying to find a little bit of release through the spine. And then gently, we're going to walk our hands forward. Coming all the way into a bit of a push-up position, so stacking shoulders over the wrists. Just gently drop down onto your knees, bring the tops of your feet down. You can try and keep your elbows squeezed in. And just lower your chest down between your hands, lowering your chest and your hips at the same time. So you keep some kind of core engagement there. And then as you inhale, lift up your chest, keeping your hands down on the mat and your elbows squeezed in towards the body. So you should feel some activation happening here into the muscles in the back of the body. Maybe engage your glutes slightly. And then slowly shift your weight back into your child's pose. Have a little wiggle there, move your hips from side to side, and then come forward. Find your tabletop position, tuck your toes, lift back up to your downward facing dog. Maybe again, paddle out the feet a little bit. And then gently walk your hands back towards your feet. Bending the knees, taking hold of opposite elbows, let the body ragdoll. And bring your hands down. We're just going to take it into quite a deep squat. Again, if you've been sat all day, this might not feel that comfortable for you. Tip is to kind of take your feet a little bit wider and turn the toes out slightly to maybe have the feet at about 45 degrees. And then slowly lower your bum down towards your mat to come into your yogi squat. Now again, depending on what availability you have in your ankles and your calves, you might find here that having the feet down is not possible. So you can always bring your hands down and come up onto the toes instead. But try if you can to keep your knees pressing out no matter where you are, so that you're getting a nice little stretch onto your inner thighs and not letting your knees collapse in. And then just have a little wiggle from side to side. I quite like to kind of roll onto the outer edges of my feet just to wake up the hips a little bit more. Using that breath nice and strong. And then come back to center. Slowly lift your hips up again, bend the knees, turn the toes in now so that they're about hip distance apart and left your feet are parallel, and then walk your hands forward to come back into that push-up position. So we're going to move through another little chaturanga. So once you find this nice stacked position, drop your knees down, bring the tops of your feet down and lower your chest down between your hands. Once again, we're going to inhale to lift the chest, keep the elbows squeezing towards the body, engage the glutes, lift the chest, the heart up towards the sky. And then as you exhale, shift your bum back towards your heels, finding your child's pose. Just come walk your hands over to your left. You're going to take your left hand off of the mat and stack your right hand on top of your left hand, and then sit your bum back towards your right heel until you feel a stretch down through the right side of the body. Beautiful, and then walk your hands back to the center. I'm going to take that over to the other side. So take your right hand over to the right edge of your mat, take it slightly off, bring your left hand on top and sit your bum back towards your left heel again, finding that lovely stretch down through the left side of the body. Walking your hands back through the center. And then slowly walk your hands back. So you're going to sit on your heels now. If this is too much for your ankles, it's uncomfortable on the tops of your feet, you can always sit on your bum instead. Maybe take a cross-legged position. So just find whatever is comfortable for you here. This is ideal, but also fine if that's not comfortable for you. So just find a nice seated position that you can kind of stay in for a couple of minutes. And then take your right hand in front of your face. Take your left arm underneath. And you're almost going to interlock the elbows. And then see what kind of bind you can take here. So I appreciate this for a lot of people is not going to be accessible. So just go with what you've got. Maybe you take hold of the thumbs. And then press your elbows forward. And you should feel a stretch start to come on in the tops of the shoulders. And then see if you can draw your elbows down a little bit. And then from here, slowly draw or drop your right ear towards your right shoulder till you feel a stretch down through the left side of the neck. Find an intensity here that is comfortable for you, so don't actively be drawing your ear down, just let it hang. Then you might find if you've been sat at a computer all morning, there's a lot of tension through the neck. We're just going to really find our breath here. So coming back to that strong awareness that we created at the start. So breathing in for 4 and out for 4. And just really focus on finding that expansion as you get to the top of your inhale. And then as you exhale, seeing if there's space to draw your elbows a little bit further down without bringing them in towards the body. And to allow that right ear to draw more towards your right shoulder. You can close your eyes if that feels natural for you. Take one more breath here. And then just release your arms, just take them out wide. Squeezing your elbows back towards each other, just feeling that stretch through the front side of the body, maybe a little bit into the biceps. And then we're just going to switch sides. So you're now going to take your left arm in front and thread your right elbow underneath. Again, find what's comfortable here. Maybe you hook the fingers. Maybe you can kind of bring the palms together. Take your elbows out to draw them away from the body and then draw them down towards the mat. Try if you can also to not let those hands come towards the face. And then take your left ear towards your left shoulder. Once again, finding a depth that feels comfortable for you. Coming back to your breath, that lovely controlled 4 count in and 4 count out. We're really just inviting our bodies and our minds into that nice parasympathetic state again, so into that lovely state of rest and digest. And finding a little bit more release through the body as we move into that space. Got one more breath here. And gently release the arms. Lift your chest up towards the sky without hyperextending into the lower back. Draw your elbows back towards one another. And then just walk your hands forward. And we're going to take our right foot forward again. This time, however, we're going to lift up. So if you already know that this is uncomfortable on the knee, which I always find it is slightly for me, you can always just roll your mat. So that you've got a little bit of extra cushioning. If you haven't got a yoga mat and you've got a pillow or something that you can pop underneath the knee, go for it. And then just lift up your chest so that your chest and your shoulders are stacked over your hips. From here, I want you to come into a nice tucked position. So rather than being collapsed over this front thigh, think about drawing your tailbone down towards the earth so that you feel a nice stretch switch on into your left hip flexor. And then see if you can maybe sink forward slightly. If you find you're a little bit wobbly for balance, you can always take your right foot a little bit wider. Just find what's comfortable for you. I always quite like to actively tilt my tailbone down so I can really feel the stretch and bring a little bit more awareness to it. And notice if you have any tension creeping into the shoulders, especially if this is quite intense for you. And just allow them to soften. Stay with your breathing. Take one more breath here. And then on your next inhale, reach your left arm up towards the ceiling. Take it up a little bit higher till you feel a little bit of a stretch come on through that left side of the body. And then as you exhale, take your left arm over towards your right, but without shifting through the hips. So try and keep the hips nice and square. And then just reach over and you might feel a little bit of a stretch come on into your QO, into your lower back. Nice space created in towards your first. Just one more breath here. And then come back up. And we're just going to take that over to the other side. So shift your bum back, release your right leg down. If you've got your mat rolled, just release it and take your left leg forward. Again, coming up, stacking your shoulders over your hips, bending your tailbone down towards your mat. You really get this nice stretch switch on that right side, and then maybe see if you can sink your hips forward, but without compressing into that left hip. I always find on one side I feel this a little bit more in my groin. So just notice what it is that you feel in your body this morning. And not to allow tension to build in your neck and shoulders. If this is a lot for you, check you're not clenching your jaw. The classic spot. And then on your next inhale, we're going to take that right arm up. Again, inhaling, finding more length through the right side of the body. And then as you exhale, reach your right arm over to your left. Changing slightly where you feel the stretch. Hopefully you're going to feel it more. So that hip flexor attaches in the back. If you only feel it on this side, that's fine. You don't have to feel it everywhere all the time. And slowly as you inhale, come back to center. Release your hands down, shift your bum back and take your left foot back to meet your right. From here, we're going to shift our feet out to one side so we're sitting down on our bums. Shift yourself forward slightly if you're on a mat and you're not in the center, and then just extend your legs out. In fact, no, we're not. We're going to bring them in slightly, and I want you to take your arms underneath your legs like you're giving yourself a nice little hug. So see if you can really actually take hold of your triceps here so that you've got a nice grip, because this is a really nice way to take a forward fold and be supported no matter how much availability you have in your hamstrings. And then just start to walk your heels away. So once you start walking your heels, it's fine. If you get to here and you're already feeling this in your hamstrings, that's cool. This stretch also gets really nice into that lower back. Well, I love it. So see where it is that you feel it. Again, if you're only feeling it in your lower back and nice little stretch and you don't feel it in your hamstrings, that's cool. If you're only feeling it in your hamstrings and not your lower back, that's also fine. If you can, find a depth that works for you. And then release your head down, dropping your chin in towards your chest, maybe resting your head down on your knees, on your shins, wherever you're at today. Just drawing your awareness in, letting your eyes close. Once again, coming back to your breath. Expanding as you inhale and softening as you exhale. Noticing whether you can feel the body give you a little bit more space as you let go of those breaths. Making sure you've not pushed yourself to a point that's not comfortable for you, and you'll always know if you've gone too far in the stretch in your yoga practice if you start putting strange faces, that you can't breathe, or you start clenching your jaw. So just look out for those slightly stressed symptoms and make sure that you're staying within a space that allows you to relax. And get one more full breath here. And maybe just unthread your arms or walk your feet in, coming out of this, however feels good in your body. And you can keep your eyes closed from now. We're just going to shift our weight back onto our hands slightly. Bring the soles of your feet down. Take your feet slightly wider than hip distance. I like to have mine about mat distance apart. And then just really gently allow your knees to drop over to your right. And come back to center. And then let them drop over to your left. So we're just windscreen wipering the leg, taking one side into internal rotation and one side into external. Take 2 more on each side. Come back to center as you inhale. Allow them to lower as you exhale. Inhale to center. Exhale, let them drop. Inhale back to center. 1 more each side. Exhale, take them down. Last one, inhale into center. Exhale, take them to your left. And then coming back to center. Bring your feet down. They're about hip distance apart again. Shift your bum forward and just come to lay down onto your backs. Once you get here, draw your knees in towards your chest. And just maybe have a little rock from side to side, just massaging out your lower back a little bit. And then find stillness in the center. Bring your hands down. The wider out you take your arms, the more the stretch you're feeling your chest and your shoulders. And just bring your shins so that they're parallel to the ground and your knees are stacked over your hips. And then with control, slowly lower your legs over to your right. So just taking a nice little spinal twist. Checking that you can breathe there. And with control, slowly come back to center with the legs. Again, making sure that your knees are over your hips. And then slowly lower your knees over to your left. And then come back to center. Wrap your arms around your shins and draw your knees in towards your chest, your forehead up towards your knees. You're curling into a tiny ball. Give yourself a nice big hug. Send your body some gratitude for everything that it does for you. And then we'll release it into the best part of the practice, into this Shavasana. So just extend your legs. Bring your arms down beside the body with your palms facing up. Closing your eyes. And we're just going to move through a really gentle breathing exercise. I want you to now inhale for a count of 4. And then just see if you can exhale really slowly and controlled for a count of 8. So we're just doubling the length of our exhale to our inhale. This is going to really help again pull our nervous system into that lovely state of rest and digest. Nice relaxed place. Everything feels much easier to operate from. Once again, as you breathe in, try and find expansion into your ribs, the back of the body, so feeling that bit of extra pressure on your mat. And as you exhale, slowly, just letting the breath leave the body, making sure you're not clenching the jaw. That space between your eyebrows is soft. All the muscles in the face are relaxed, that your neck and your shoulders are relaxed. And if you find you run out of breath, just not letting go of quite so much as you start that exhale. Noticing if your mind starts to wander, and if every time it does, you can just bring it back to the breath. This is where the true practice comes in. And you can quiet the distractions. And you slowly start to let your breath soften back to a more natural rhythm. Letting go of any control, just noticing the weight of your bodies on your mat. You start to wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. Maybe rock your head from side to side. And when you're ready, just finding your way back up to seated. Taking one nice big inhale, really filling up the lungs. And then opening the mouth, sigh the breath out. Bring the palms of your hands together. Thank you very much for sharing your practice with me this morning and allowing me to guide you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was...
Everybody's feeling a little bit more free.
Yeah, that was great.
Even I feel chilled now. It's nice. It's the joy of yoga.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. I hope everything continues on smoothly for you.
Thank you. All right.
Awesome.
Great, thanks so much, Natasha, for that great yoga session. So now we've got our oral presentation. So I'm just going to hand over to our first presenters. We've got a presentation on digital storytelling. So I'm going to hand over to Sue Barron and share my screen with you. Just bear with us a second, Sue. We're just getting things sorted for you. We're almost there. Just hang in there a second. Great. So Sue, we're going to hand over to yourself. If you're able to share your presentation, that would be great. We're having some technical difficulties on our end.
You hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Sue. Yes, yeah. We just can't see you though.
No, and the camera won't start, so I've got some difficulties here as well.
If she puts up a PowerPoint presentation and then shares the screen, that should
Are you able to load your PowerPoint presentation to your screen and then we can allow you to share that?
Yeah, but what you've got is my my video won't start. So you're going to.
You should be able to do it.
Okay, we can. I think we've resolved that issue on our end. Just give us 1 second and we'll load it up for you, Sue.
Okay, I've got it here.
Can you
anyway,
see your presentation?
I can. Thank you.
Amazing. So we'll let you take over then, if you like. Just let us know how you want your presentation to be shown.
Okay, so if I just tell you to move on the slides.
Perfect.
Is this actually going out now, or?
This should be going out exactly.
That's the beauty of something that's going out live, isn't it? So
exactly.
Can you actually
some
at the moment?
I didn't quite catch that, Sue. What did you say?
Is my camera showing? I can't seem to start my.
The camera's not showing at the moment, but we can hear you, which I think is the most important part.
That's fine. Well, you've got to, if that's okay, I'll get started then for you because I know time's pressured. Really, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this today. I'm not going to read these slides. People hate PowerPoint slides, but really what it is, it's to introduce digital storytelling. Now, that's a very grand name for actually what it is. It's capturing people's accounts of their first-hand experiences. And we've had some really inspiring speakers so far this morning. It's a really inspiring conference. I'm really enjoying this. And really what this is that I know our focus of this conference is about well-being of staff and patients, everyone really basically who either works in or attends the NHS. And we are all pushed for time. And what this approach allows you to do is actually capture some accounts through film, and then they can be shared more widely. So in this particular project, the aim was actually, well, I suppose what I should do is just rewind a little bit and actually say, you know, we can do improvement projects with staff and we can involve patients in those, but actually do we always, and even if we're doing that approach, can we make sure we capture the voices of those people who are experiencing inequalities in care? And in this instance, what this project aimed to do is actually address some of the issues experienced by the 15% of people who are admitted to hospital each year who face a threefold increased risk of experiencing a patient safety incident because they've got a communication disability. So if we move on to the next slide, please. I should have said I'm from the Bournemouth University, but you've obviously seen that already. And this is some work that, so that was our aim to actually, well, what can we do to raise awareness of this when you can't actually always involve people who have a communication disability? They're not always given the opportunity to have a voice. So how can we do that? So we set up a co-creation project, and because I work in higher education and I'm responsible for sort of supporting the preparation of our nursing students, so I'm future workforce, I thought it was a great opportunity to involve a student in the project. And we found a service user as well, whose name is Helen, who has cerebral palsy and complex communication needs, and is actually very happy to be part of this project. And the idea was to learn from her first-hand experiences and share those accounts to nursing students, but also it's gone wider than that now. The product that we've actually produced, the films we've produced, have attracted a lot of interest. So although I've set some objectives here, what's actually happened is it's gone wider than this. So our objectives in the first place were to draw attention to the risks faced by people with a communication disability when they become patients, raise awareness of nurses and healthcare workers' legal and professional duty to identify, record and act on every patient's communication needs. I don't know if everyone is aware of that as yet, but all organisation has a duty to do that. How do you do that when you can't communicate with your patient? It's more challenging, isn't it? To promote empathy as a vital component of professionalism and a skill and competency that actually can be learned, and to develop an educational resource that can be readily accessed and shared. And that's one of the reasons why I'm presenting today. So next slide, please. So just from this, I'm not going to go through all the steps, but it started, as you can see at the top, the student involved, a final year nursing student. She was awarded £500 as part of this towards costs or any development learning opportunities she wanted. The next picture down actually shows the resultant clips we made with Helen, based on her real life experiences of being a patient in hospital and being admitted to hospital. That first one actually is talking about her account as being admitted to a hospital setting. And the final slide, the final picture at the bottom there is actually, if you do things like this, if you can raise awareness of those seldom heard voices by capturing them through film, for example, you can reach a much wider audience. So the picture at the bottom is actually, it's called the Virtual Empathy Museum. And this is something that was launched by the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. So by publishing and making people more aware of what this story does, it's actually sort of gaining interest, if you like. One of the things, we can go to the next one now, thank you. Next slide. One of the things we found from this is just really, well, one of the things we try and do in the film is actually give the opportunity for people providing care as well as patients to gain a better understanding of what it's like from both perspectives. So students are actually asked to put themselves, when viewing the film, to put themselves firstly in the position of Helen and then secondly as Emma, and actually consider what it might be like to be in either of those positions. And actually from that, it gives them an opportunity to actually talk about how they might feel if they were in a situation where they couldn't communicate with their patient. I'm very aware I'm running out of time a bit here, so I'll just go on to the final slide. If anyone's interested in this project or the film at all, you're very welcome to just contact me and I'm happy to share it. But before I go, just look at this one comment, which is from Helen. And if we listen to this, or this is what she said. So cerebral palsy is not just something I have, just something I have. It's not a problem. My cerebral palsy is not my disability. Society is my disability, and sadly people's attitudes towards me. People automatically think I have a learning disability just because I talk funny and sit in a wheelchair. People just treat me like a child. So the voices of these people, when we're trying to improve services, have to be included in some way. And I thank her for actually enabling us to have this resource. Thank you for listening.
Amazing. Thank you, Sue. Thank you for telling us all about that project. I think we can all agree how poignant storytelling can be, and it sounds like a wonderful project to be involved in. What we'll do is I'm going to hand over to our next oral presentation, and there may be some questions that come up via Twitter that you can respond to on that platform.
Thank you.
So I'll just open up our next presentation. So next we have Bianca and Tracy on What Matters to You Matters to Us. Bianca, Tracy, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, hi, yes.
Hi, great. So I'll just share my screen so people can see your great presentation. There we go. I think it's up for everyone to see now. And over to you guys.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Bianca. I'm one of the quality improvement coaches at Eastern North Hertfordshire NHS Trust. Along with Trace, we're really happy to be here today presenting our work. So can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So we all know through research that better staff experience leads to better patient outcomes, which in turn improves staff engagement and confidence. We've learned through the What Matters to You campaigns and IHI's framework for improving joy in work, the importance of having meaningful conversations. With this in mind, we at Eastern North Hearts Trust over the year adapted the model for improvement to ensure that before starting any improvement work, we ask every patient and staff and stakeholder what matters to you. We want to enable teams to understand the reasons why what matters to you is important, so that they can create a shared purpose, and then use the model for improvement to guide and start their improvement journey. Can I have the next slide, please? So with our adapted model, we came up with a vision, and we thought that what if we all asked our patients, our service users, and relevant stakeholders what matters to them, listened to understand, and then did what matters. We think that we should take it another step where we can't do what matters, explain the reasons behind why it can't be done, or when will it be done. We aligned ourselves with our trust quality strategy, and our aim, therefore, based on our vision, is that by 2024, 100% of our improvement projects will be co-designed with our patients and carers. We believe that by doing this, we will be genuinely harnessing good relationships with all those involved in their care. Next slide, please. So what did we do? So we held 2 What Matters to You events, one in December 2019 and one in June 2020 on What Matters to You Day. This slide specifically demonstrates the What Matters to You data based on staff feedback. We gave out What Matters to You forms across all our inpatient wards on What Matters to You days. 171 forms were returned, and over 200 statements, staff statements, were analyzed against the 9 components of the join wheel indicators, which is what you're seeing here on the Pareto's charts. So what is the story telling us? What we found was when we asked our staff what matters to them, and you can see on the bottom left-hand corner, the teamwork and supportive leadership and having physical and psychological safety is what matters to our staff at East and North Hearts. We also found out that when we asked them what gets in the way of a good day at work, those were the very 3 things that got in the way of having a good day at work. You can see in the top left-hand corner there. And not surprisingly, when we asked our staff how we can support them, they said it was having physical and psychological safety, supportive leadership, and good team working relationships. So you can see through the slide how each of those 3 themes came out from the staff feedback that we analyzed. To ensure good inter-rater reliability, 2 members of our team, including Trace, analyzed the statements against the 9 indicators of the join wheel framework. Can I have the next slide, please? So we took it a step further. What we asked our staff was, what mattered to you most about your work? And our staff members said that having meaning and purpose, teamwork, and physical and psychological safety enabled them to connect to their work. And those were the very 3 things that enabled them to create an impact during the height of the pandemic. You can see some staff statements there, demonstrating that team working and how they use that to influence their work. Next slide, please. So what have we learned so far? What we've learned is doing what matters most to our staff and our patients is important. We, during this 1 year, have started to undertake coaching conversations, which starts with that very question of what matters to you. The Trust has introduced Schwartz rounds and a QI coaching program, our first cohort in action. We believe that having these programs of work will enable staff to speak up and talk about what matters to them and their issues. We've taken it a step further. We want to celebrate our wins, and we recognize the work of many of our staff members through our You Matter to Us certificates. What we did for our patients, we've introduced two programs of work. One is the Patient and Carer Partnership Program. And here what we've started to do is run QI projects to improve communication between patients and families during the pandemic. And several QI projects are currently underway, testing ideas of how they can enable loved ones to speak to patients whilst they're in hospital. We've started work on a harm-free care program. The falls and pressure ulcer work has started various QI projects to test ideas again. What we're hoping to achieve next through these 2 programs is ensure that the What Matters to You is the starting point of each program of work. A carer and a patient hotline with a menu of options will enable our patients to request simple things like a newspaper to a virtual call to their loved one if they wanted to. We think that having a patient experience lead or champion in each service or department will encourage these conversations, will not only just encourage these conversations, but also address any local system issues that are beyond the scope of the local leaderships. We think a bank of patient and carer stories through our own website and resources will enable staff to connect to why this work is important. And we think through friends and family tests, we are going to ask our volunteers to collect real-time data, asking the what matters to you question in real time to both our staff and patients. That will help us to look at whether the improvement work is really making a difference. So these are going to be our next line of action. And we're really excited about this program of work. Thank you. Thank you for listening to us. And Trace, is there anything you'd like to?
No, thanks, Bea. You've done a great job. Well done.
Amazing. Thank you both. That all sounds really, really positive. And I completely agree with you that by sort of better understanding the staff experience, we'll better understand our patient experience and improve that as well. That's great. So I'm going to move on to our third speakers then. So we've got another exciting presentation. I'm just going to load up now. So we've got There's No Place Like Home, Barbara Walker. Barbara, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, Barbara. Thanks for joining us. So I'm just loading up your presentation now. Hopefully you can see that now.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. And I'll hand over to you both then.
Okay, thank you. We're here to introduce our quality improvement project. Good morning, my name's Gillian Russell. I'm Community Discharge Manager, Assistant Service Manager, and this is Barbara Walker, Assistant Service Manager for Physio and for our Falls team in the Belfast Trust. So we're very pleased to present our quality improvement project today. It was a Safety Quality Belfast Quality Improvement Project, which commenced in September 19 and rolled on until March 20. But with the pandemic, we're actually only starting to reboot it now. But I'll go through the presentation with you now. So the background, it's about discharge to assess. It's looking at getting patients home once they're medically fit, and making sure that they're getting home with the right assessments, the right team, getting them home within their home environment, which is the right place, and getting them home as soon as they're medically fit and not being delayed in hospital. This is, also involves creating flow through the acute hospitals. It ensures there's no long-term decisions made within the hospital setting, so there's no permanent packages of care or no nursing home placements. And it's a collaborative approach across the acute hospitals, on-schedule care, and our community transitional services. Our baseline data, which we gathered initially over a 3-month period, we went back to June and August. And our data we collated, we have a community discharge hub. It's a community-facing team where all of the referrals come through. And we had only 6 patients who were referred through to our hub from the acute medical unit, where the 2 wards that we were looking at in the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast. So we had only 6 patients within that 3-month period. We had then started the project in September, October, and had a look at the data at that stage. And our average length of stay within the acute medical unit, once they were medically fit, and for us to try and get them discharged out to the community, was an average of 4 days, which meant there was only 8% of patients actually were discharged within the 48 hours, which is our KPI within the Belfast Trust. Next slide, please. So our driver diagram, or aim for our overall project, was to increase the number of patients discharging from the acute medical unit within the Royal Hospital. We started off with just 2 wards. Via a discharge to assess pathway, we wanted to increase this by 50% 50% between November 19 and March through the development of an allied health professional-led protocol involving occupational therapists and physiotherapists. Our primary drivers were communication, that was linking in with the wards, the community discharge service or community services, and especially linking in with our patients. We had to look at all of the documentation and amalgamate. In Northern Ireland, we have regional assessment forms with medical and nursing forms and a combined OT and physio form. So we had amalgamate all of those forms into one triage and have a telephone triage to try to improve flow through the hospital. Looking at the checklist and the collaboration across all teams. Our capacity again, we initially started with just therapy led, but we also involved the care component. So we needed to make sure that we guaranteed that we have care component available for the project. Next slide, please. So looking at our PDSA ramp, so it's plan, do, study and act. We initially started off looking at all of the protocols and how we're going to do the quality assurance of getting the patients out of hospital. We devised a flow chart for the acute setting, also for the community and our transitional services. It was an AHP-led protocol, and we refined this and looked at the referrals coming through, and we reduced the quality assurance time by doing a telephone triage with the OTs and physios in the ward setting to speed up the discharges. We had a Microsoft Teams for our data collection, and that meant that the community and the hospital could all put the data into the one team. And our pilot area, that was the plan to extend that to other areas within the Belfast Trust and across all sites. I'm going to pass over to Barbara.
I'm just going to take you through our data. So the next slide. We have in the first diagram, we have our number of discharges following the two wards coming out through the discharge to assess protocol. On average, we were having a 50% increase in number of patients being discharged via this D2A pathway, remembering that our baseline set was was 6 patients in 3 months. And as you can see, when we started to introduce the AHP-led discharge protocol and telephone triage, our numbers of discharges gradually increased to 14 per month over this 4-month period. In the second diagram, we have our length of stay. The Trust's target from once a patient is declared medically fit to home is 48 hours. And that was where our goal was achieving. Before we started this project, it was taking on average 120 hours and more, which is on average 3 to 4 days. Once we started to introduce our AHP-led protocols, our various test change cycles throughout this period, our length of stays gradually reduced down, and we were then gradually making discharges on same day of medically fit to discharge. We had a 30% average reduction in number of bed days delayed, and that was our target, and actually we superseded this over to 85% in delayed bed days, which is an average of 3.4 days bed days saved to the Trust. Our target again was a 30% improvement in the number of patients waiting less than 48 hours, and in actual fact we overachieved this, and over this period we were taking on average 14.5 patients out per month. Into the next slide. Our future plans. We were devising a service user questionnaire which was implemented at the end of this in February 2020. Obviously with COVID, this has went on the back burner a little bit, but we have gathered service user feedback, which is on our poster, and overall rating is that they absolutely didn't know what they would do without this service. It meant they had a very speedy discharge, excellent communication between the teams. Our workforce review was...
It sounds like... Sorry to cut you off, Barbara. It sounds like you've had some really great outcomes for the patients there.
Yes. Yes, we did.
We are...
Sorry, it's just to say that obviously this... Sorry,
Barbara, are you still with us?
I'm still with you.
That's fine. Did you have some concluding remarks there?
Yes, please. Just to say that we saved over 52,000 over that 4-month period, and really what we want to do, if you just go into the last slide, was obviously looking at those additional reprofiled resources, and we needed to look at investing resources into the community to ensure that we have a timely discharge out from hospital through into the community, and it's a safer discharge overall for the patient. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you, Gillian. Thank you, Barbara. That was a really great presentation. I'm sorry that we were a little bit limited by time today. As I said before, there may be some questions for you on Twitter, so keep an eye out for those if you can. I'm sure our audience have some questions that they might want to ask you.
Thank you.
So I'll move on to our final presentation then. So we've got one more on communication at the NHS Nightingale Northwest. So I'll hand over to Megan and James. Are you there, Megan and James? Megan, James?
Hello, sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Good,
yeah.
Good to have you both. We'll hand over to you for the final presentation then.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, so my name's James, and I'll be, just to save complication, I'll be presenting on behalf of myself and Megan. We were two SHOs who did a small scale quality improvement project at the Nightingale up in Manchester, looking to improve communication with next of kins with the doctors there. So that's what we'll be running through with you today. So just a bit of the background, really. So obviously it's a temporary field hospital, and that means that there was no real established protocols, which meant it was an interesting environment to work in. And the patient demographic was lots of very frail patients. The median age was 89. So you know, and there was lots of dementia, lots of comorbidities. So these were patients that were often not really able to relay information to the families themselves, and often involved, it needed quite comprehensive collateral histories. There was a very strict visiting policy, as you might expect, obviously only patients who were end of life. And obviously there was a lot of anxiety. We were in the midst of a pandemic, COVID's a new disease. And these patients had just come to a hospital, which until a couple of months ago was a conference centre. So we recognised that, you know, in this context, communication with next of kin was going to be particularly important. And we perceived that it wasn't being done as well as it could have been done initially. And that's why we wanted to improve that. And we started out by gathering some just sort of general initial data to try and contextualise the problem. And without going into too much detail, we looked at communication with different members of the team. We just set up a family liaison team, which was facilitating direct communication through tablets to the patients, and that was working really well. But there was a mismatch in terms of the expectation of communication from doctors themselves and what the next of kin were receiving, and there was appeared to be a mixed satisfaction there. And so that was why we sort of addressed our, if you just the next point, our specific aim was to reduce variability in next of kin satisfaction with the medical team themselves, and that was the quality improvement project that we decided to focus on. So we sort of used next of kin satisfaction essentially as a proxy for overall quality of communication, and so that was our primary outcome measure, and we did standardized phone calls to get a rating of 1 to 5 over our time period. We also collected qualitative feedback, And so that enabled us to essentially identify those who are rating particularly lowly and look at the qualitative feedback. And we sort of drew a process map, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen here. From our qualitative feedback, the major issue appeared to be more reduced frequency of communication rather than poor quality. And so we decided to particularly try and work on this lack of process. And that was where we made our initial interventions. So we went through 3 PDSA cycles. The first of which was to set a standard. So sort of this was based on initial data we'd collected and also discussion with the executive team to set a standard that we thought was appropriate as a minimum frequency of contact with next of kins. And we disseminated that sort of formally at handover, and then we also made a short and a sort of amusing video to try and that we then shared with doctors to try and increase awareness of this standard, which seemed to subjectively seem to be well received. And then we introduced a practice of updating the doctor's list with the last next of kin update, to essentially serve as a method of prompting doctors as to if someone hadn't had any communication for a week or something. So those were the sort of 3 interventions we introduced. And in terms of the results, like I said, it was a very small scale study, and you can see this over a very short period of time. And we introduced our interventions in sort of quite rapid sequence. So we introduced our interventions on the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th. And the results, I guess, potentially show that we were starting to reduce variability with communication, with satisfaction of communication, sorry, and scoring very highly towards the end. Certainly with our process measures, we had really good compliance. So in terms of those meeting the standard of minimum frequency of communication, that was up to 87% after the intervention, much higher. And we had really good compliance with our other intervention with regards to updating the doctor's list. That was done surprisingly accurately. So yeah, bringing me on to our conclusions. So I guess what we would say was there was a promising improvement in sort of doctor next of kin communication, certainly with excellent uptake of our interventions, but obviously very significant limitations, primarily the fact that this was done over a very short period of time, and we were therefore not able to demonstrate any lasting impact over time. But certainly the really high compliance with interventions was suggestive of the fact that this could be a sustainable improvement. The hospital transitioned into standby mode, and we did have some MDT discussion about possible further interventions that we would introduce if we were to reactivate. The most popular being this MDT communication sheet. And just wanted to finally end by talking about a few of our particular lessons learned. Obviously, we know how important it is to engage relevant stakeholders when you're doing QI work, and we found it really helpful that at the Nightingale, the executives had a really open door policy, and that made things a lot easier for us, and that was really good. But more than that, there was just a real can-do atmosphere, and a real atmosphere of getting things done very quickly, and that really encouraged you as a junior doctor to get involved in QI. And so that was really refreshing, and that would be something that would be really nice to see across all workplaces. And then finally, our final point we wanted to highlight is, unfortunately, we're all going to be seeing a lot more patients with COVID over the next few months, and just to reinforce the particular importance of communication with next of kin in this context. So I hope I've got through that quite quickly, and I hope that was all still very clear, and thank you very much.
Definitely a whistle stop tour this morning, but really important that you took on such a contentious issue at the time, and so true that we need to keep this in mind really as we move forward in the next coming months. seeing more COVID patients in hospital. And thank you again, actually, to all of our oral presenters this morning. You're all fantastic, and it's great to hear about the QI that's going on across the country at the moment, and really encouraging to see that there are lots of good projects, and there's still very much a big QI spirit in the midst of everything that's going on. As I said, feel free to interact with our audience on the Twitter or YouTube live platforms. That would be amazing. Thank you again.